Welcome to the 515th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist living in Southwest Florida, and welcome. Thanks for listening. So this is the Masters weekend. If you've listened to this podcast, you knew I grew up as a golfer, not a runner, but always enjoyed watching Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player and Arnold Palmer and Tom Watson. They were, to name a few of the great golfers when I were growing up. And every year when they start the Masters, they start with Jack and Gary Player and Tom Watson. Jack Nicklaus continues to decline. He's really overweight. His arthritis is bad. Gary Player, on the other hand, a vegan golfer, is very spry. I think he's well into his 80s. And just got up and poked the ball into the tee into the ground, hit a good shot, kicked his leg, and had a great time with the crowd, where Jack, and to a lesser degree Tom, but had trouble getting their tee in the ground and, just really struggled. Sad to see. They're not all that old, but it shows that you have to maintain a healthy lifestyle to continue to do what you love at a late age. It's actually a very well-controlled trial with the three of them to watch how they age, Gary Player being the oldest of the three, doing the best. But nobody notices or comments, and the menu for the Champions Dinner at Augusta was just terrible. Sad diet, burgers and sweet desserts, and it was just a high-fat, high-calorie diet. So these guys may think they work out, the young ones, and they can hang on, but they need to look in the mirror and see that if you continue to eat this way when you're Jack's age, things might not be so good. This month, April, we have a movement challenge to get people to try to walk a couple miles a day, at least 20 minutes, and we have a strength workout every day. I post a picture of Trio and I running on Facebook every morning to get people out, get them motivated to run. We have the same few responders that see and maybe notice, and a few people comment and a few people get involved. But for the most part, just like putting my marathon T-shirts and medals on the wall fails to really motivate anybody. And what is motivation anyway? And I've kind of come to the conclusion that you can't motivate somebody, you can't externally motivate someone. It has to be something that comes from within. It has to be something that someone is looking for and actively seeking, and something that they're drawn to and want to do. And so to take a non-walker or a non-runner and try to motivate them into doing it is probably next to impossible. Again, few people dabble and maybe get the idea, but for the most part, the other peer group quickly squashes it. On the other hand, in the running community, we see people of all ages continuing to run and enjoy it, run trails and enjoy the camaraderie of doing it. So it's not like it quits happening. It's just the two groups never seem to come together. Motivation seems to be something that always stays on the couch or maybe at the breakfast table, but never truly gets to the road. It comes down to what's your why to actually get you out of the door and to get things going. Somewhere along the line, people become very much afraid of stepping out of their comfort zone. Afraid to fail, afraid to maybe be thought of as a spectacle. As my friend Andy Kroom says, you're too old for that, perhaps. But more and more studies are associating muscle strength and endurance to longevity and how we age and how our health span is. And we can keep people alive a long time. They may not have a quality of life, and they might end up, their bodies don't keep up with their mind. It seems like either people's maybe have dementia and their bodies are still okay, or their bodies fade and give up on their mind still there. And I do believe it's largely because the medical community intervenes a lot, and some of those outcomes we participate in. We may help in some regard and hurt in others, but there's very little self-change that comes along with these lifestyle diseases. We're told to accept them, take your medication, take your procedures, and go on about and live the best that you can with what you've got left. And I don't believe it has to be that way. We're told if we get enough tests and do enough screening, blood work, that that will ultimately save us. And this week there was a new test that's been added to the regimen called troponins. And typically troponins are checked if you go into the hospital with a heart attack. So if you're having symptoms of a heart attack and you go into the hospital, troponins are checked. And they're checked, if they're abnormal, then it is associated with a leak of an enzyme that may be associated with impending doom. If they're very high, associated with EKG changes, then there's an acute myocardial infarction, and you track the enzyme leak, how much leak there is, and when it resolves, and kind of gets people back to baseline. But this study wondered whether or not if you checked a troponin on people that weren't having symptoms, would it show anything? And even if it was normal, if it was one standard deviation above normal, would that show anything? And so they took 62,150 patients or participants, and they looked at people that had troponin I or T, one standard deviation above normal, and found 8,133 with troponin T and 3,779 with troponin I went on to have events. And they said, well, if we were to screen these people and add this to traditional health screens of do you smoke, do you have diabetes, do you have high cholesterol, or if you're overweight, do you have a family history, and we add this troponin onto your workup with your cholesterol and your hemoglobin A1C, what would we get? And it estimated by a mathematical model that we would save another person. For every 500 people that we did this to, we might save one person from having a vascular event. Not living longer, but having a vascular event. And mainly the thought was that if we identify these people, then even more people should be placed on statins, because that may decrease those events. So it's a pretty big leap from a normal but high normal value of troponin on a screening blood test, to risk factors, to statin therapy, to ultimately think that we might prevent vascular events. What it will do is make more people need more procedures. So they'll need more CT angios, caths, stress tests, more testing. And it may find a few people that have asymptomatic disease. And again, go back to, if you are asymptomatic, putting a stent in, doing a bypass is not going to make you live a day longer. So it is adding to the pool of patients that are undergoing all these tests. And so we're going from, as physicians, healing people that are ill to trying to test people and find people that feel fine and do things too. All in the name of maybe preventing an event, but we have to realize that some of these procedures may actually cause events. But it makes us feel good because we had our blood tests and we had our screening tests, and we think that we're doing our part. But in reality, our body continues to fall apart and nothing is done. So no one talked about changing lifestyle factors with these abnormal troponins. It's all about, going and, again, making people patients. And there are quite a few people that think that they're making great strides with their nutrition. Better than I used to be is quite a common phrase that I hear. So we make little changes and hope for the best. And we blame the standard American diet on being a diet that obviously is associated with a lot of lifestyle diseases, but how we individually describe that standard American diet varies from our own perspective. So we all throw the people that eat fast food under the bus, and go through the drive-in windows and all that. If you dug deep into it, how many times do you have to go to a fast food place to be considered a standard American diet? How many times a week do you have to go out for dinner to eat a standard American diet? Would you define that as a piece of lean meat, a vegetable, and a potato, or does it have to be something that comes from a fast food or a restaurant? So there's this giant continuum, and what actually causes a problem is that are all of these under the same blanket, or are there some standard American diets that are better than others? Because certainly everybody's not having a heart attack. So, we can point to the people that we think are a little bit worse than we are to reassure ourselves that we're not that bad. Therefore, our standard American diet might be enough to save us, especially if we screen and we're not in one of these screening we don't fall, we don't get red marks on our blood work, and we're not eating the standard American diet that the other people eat, maybe we'll be okay. And of course, our plant-based community, we compare ourselves to the standard American diet, and so do the ketogenic people and the low-carb people, and the carnivores compare themselves to the standard American diet. So all those people in the middle in that standard American diet are doing bad things, but we people on the fringe seem to be we're okay once you get to the fringe, wherever that fringe might be. But with the ketogenic diet, there's been some observations where people get really lean, but their cholesterol goes markedly up in the 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 range. And the question comes, is that associated with increased vascular events and increased heart attacks? And they call them lean hyper responders. And what it basically means is these people are eating a low or a high fat diet, and they're lean, but they have a very high cholesterol. And do they actually have vascular disease? So there was a recent study that was poor, and the results are evaluated multiple ways, but they basically recruited 100 people from social media that were on a ketogenic diet, that were lean and a hyper responder, had high cholesterol, and they asked them to get a CT scan at baseline and follow up in 1 year. And they did some mathematical models looking at the plaque that they had to start with and the plaque that they had at 1 and 3 years. And then they also looked at their cholesterol levels, their lipoprotein B, their LDL, which most of the cardiovascular community associate with a very high level being a big risk for cardiovascular disease, because again, people with tremendously high lipids that have familial hyperlipidemia have tended to have more events over the years. So they looked at the function, and they looked at 1 year, and they saw an 18 millimeter increase in the plaque. So they had plaque progression. The plaques grew at 1 year. And they grew greater than people that are on the standard American diet would grow in a year. If you compare them to other studies, again, not completely apples to apples, but certainly maybe apples, maybe Pink Lady to Honeycrisp or something along that line. And they looked at in diabetics plaque progression. So if you have a really high cholesterol and you're lean and you're young and the plaque progresses, it's more than somebody eating it's more than somebody eating a standard American diet, less than a diabetic, but the lipids didn't change over that year, so they said the lipids weren't the cause of it or didn't matter. Well, the problem with that study is that their plaques got worse, and they said, well, the plaques get worse and there's nothing you can do about it, basically. So if a carnivore diet, a ketogenic diet, is touting that there's a decrease in inflammation despite having high cholesterol, and cholesterol has nothing to do with vascular disease, then why is the plaque progressing? Because if the plaque is progressing, not calcified plaque, so not a stable plaque, but plaque in general, and most people that are looking on the outside saying, I don't know how you come up with this conclusion, because their cholesterol is high, their apolipoprotein B is high, they had plaque to start with, younger than the normal population, and the plaque progressed greater than, in all the patients, all the people, the plaque progressed, and come to a conclusion that it's not because of my cholesterol. It just because you had plaque and it gets worse. And I think that's a sad justification. And it's a very short study, small number of people, and younger people, because I don't think people realize that if you're 30 and 40, it takes a while to get these plaques to the point where they're big enough that we can, really get a handle on and they become dangerous. The 20%ers, it takes a bit to get a 20% plaque. You start with just some abnormality of the endothelium, and it's not really plumped up. It's just, we call it a fatty streak. And so if you were to look at the artery under a microscope, you would see abnormalities, but it wouldn't be a narrowing, and it wouldn't be, like plumped up like a narrowing. It takes a while to get to those. And once you get to those, then they can rupture and cause a heart attack. According to the study, once you get those, they're going to progress. And if you eat a ketogenic diet, they're going to progress quicker. The bottom line, it didn't reverse disease. It didn't stabilize the plaque. So I'm not sure what the bragging rights would be. I listen to a variety of podcasts, running, health, various things. And I listen to these ultra runner coaching type influencers. They discuss some exercise physiology studies on their podcasts, and I kind of like to follow and see what they're saying. Frankly, they seem a bit irritating and condescending, but nevertheless, sometimes you have to listen to things you don't want to hear to maybe learn something, or at least hear some studies that you can review on your own. And usually that's exactly what I do. I go pull up data and review it on my own. But they hit below the belt today when they threw vegans under the bus because we weren't getting enough protein. And they threw a lot of studies under the bus as far as the amount of protein people getting. And I do think that in some people, especially people doing a lot of exercise in the ultra world and the triathlon world, they need more protein. And I think that a lot of times when people transition to a plant-based diet, especially if they're trying to lose weight and they've listened to other podcasts on weight loss and being vegan, and people tend to lean towards eating a lot of vegetables and grains, but not a lot of protein. Beans are not the sexy part of a vegan diet for the most part. A lot of people don't know how to cook tofu. And so they get pushed back unless they're, on a burrito, usually. And so people, I think, don't a lot of times get enough protein in their diet. But it's not because they're vegan, it's because they're not balancing their plate. And I think that you do have to, just like any nutrition plan or any person that's trying to eat healthy, you need to see that you have a balanced plate. Are you getting, even the recommendations from the American Dietetic Association? I mean, they're not horrible when it comes to, are you getting fruits and vegetables? Are you getting fiber? And are you getting a source of protein? It needs to be balanced. There are people that are fruitarians that do okay. They live, I don't know that they're, 100-year-olds, but they seem to be okay. They tend to be skinny people, but they may not have disease, and that's fine. But they're eating a tremendous amount of those foods. But most people fall more into I'm kind of trying to lean up a little bit and be healthy. So their approach comes from that aspect, being plant-based. So again, I think that you do have to watch your plate, that you have a source of protein. Chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds are a source of protein. Grains are a source of protein. Whole grains, but not a whole lot per calorie in white pastas. There's some. But beans are a great source, and it's not just, it's a variety of beans. So all the different beans, pinto, black, lentils, white beans, cannelli beans, even peas, lima beans. So, a variety of different beans, and tofu or tempeh, or edamame. And it should be, especially a higher intake, lunch and dinner. And I think in an athlete who is trying to build muscle or breaking down muscle because of excessive training, needs to be careful that then they need to get a little bit more protein, because they're utilizing more protein breaking down and building. Older people probably also need a little bit more protein. We don't need to go giant leaps over the top, but I think that protein requirements are increased. On the other hand, then these people are talking about eating cheeseburgers 3 times a week, and the one is actually an epidemiologist, MD, and talks about eating 4 eggs a week. And they're young, they're in their 30s, and don't have a scale, and don't weigh, and don't worry about your body weight. And while I think eating disorders are something that is very real, especially in the ultra and in the endurance world and the athletic world in general, a blanket statement like that can also be as harmful as the other way around. And certainly they're not leading by example when they're eating a poor diet and giggling about it. Nestle Quick for breakfast, protein powder with sugary cereal in it. It's certainly not a healthful way to eat, or a way that's going to result in perhaps longevity in the sport, despite having high proteins, or longevity in general. So just because somebody's young and those soft plaques or those fatty streaks have not been identified yet does not mean that they are immune from getting them. And while people that are extremely athletic push back the clock a little bit when it comes to vascular disease, it catches up. Look at the golfing community. Look at the football community, the basketball community. There's not that many people that can leave their sport or decrease the volume of their sport and not start to have health problems. And it's not because just stopping the sport cost them. It's because of how they ate during those activities as well that may very well lead to the problem. So kind of irritated me to have somebody brag about eating cheeseburgers in their 30s and still be skinny and don't anybody else worry. And it's like, from that side of the street, maybe you don't see it, but from this side of the street, I see that as a recipe for disaster, because people getting into their 40s start to really, really struggle with maintaining their weight once they actually have a family and they're having to take care of them, and their activities aren't number one in their family. So it just gets much more complicated. So yes, you can get adequate amounts of protein as a vegan or a plant-based eater, and yes, eating animal products in excess is not going to be to your benefit long term. May you be able to tolerate them a little longer than your counterpart that's not doing exercise? Maybe, but it will catch up. Our bodies will take a lot of abuse, either not enough or too much, for a long time before things start to manifest. And just because you have a normal calcium CT score at 35 or 40, or normal blood work at 35, does not mean that things are not going to go awry one way or another. Certainly increased risk of colon cancer with eating a diet. And again, posting, not even eating cheeseburgers, but cheeseburgers that they picked up in the paper products that are coated with Teflon products. So eating those several times and absorbing those products into your food. We know that even if you take takeout food in the plastic containers, you leach the plastic from the containers. If you have a wrapper on food that the ketchup doesn't bleed through, then that Teflon lining will also bleed into your cheeseburger. So the French fries that are in the container that, again, doesn't resist the oil and the ketchup is also a Teflon of sort lined that has been shown to leach into the food. So doing that over and over again, it's an endocrine disruptor, meaning it has an increased risk of carcinogens and to hormone-related cancers. The thickeners that are in some cheap drinks, Nestle's Quick, for instance, has carrageenan, which is a known carcinogen. So consuming large amounts without looking at the label of these things are also carcinogens, not to mention the sugary dyes that we see in kids' cereals, and the glyphosates. I think glyphosates are one of the biggest things to our gut microbiome that causes problems that people don't even realize, and they have gut disturbances and immune dysfunction because of those. So just because your waistline doesn't show the problem doesn't mean that the rest of you are not going to show problems if you, eat with no regard those types of foods. So, I'll leave you with, don't be afraid to eat beans. Eat a nice portion of beans at lunch and dinner. Use a variety. You can spice them up differently, make them more Tex-Mex. You can make them more, we do white beans with potatoes, carrots, and cabbage. Add a little garlic with them. You can do Swiss chard with white beans. They'll go together. So there's a variety of different ways to eat beans, and you just experiment, and I think it'll do you well. I guess to wrap it up, next race is April 25th, the Skunk Ape Revenge 50 miler. So it'll be the longest race for a while, and then go into Cruel Jewels. So I'm starting to do some hill work on the treadmill. 1 day a week, and speed work 1 day a week, and then a long run 1 day a week. And so far, knock on wood, I'm doing my strength training. My ankle seems to be holding up, so I'm happy about that. I'm learning to push the gears a little bit. You talked last week about pushing into a zone that was a little bit more uncomfortable to try to increase my speed and pace, and I'm actually starting to enjoy doing some of those things. It's not as scary. It took a few weeks to see whether or not my ankle's going to tolerate it, or how I would feel afterwards, or would I be too sore or tired. So I had to do a lot of self-talk. It's okay to be a little on the heavy leg side, because I'm going to have heavy legs when I'm running 50 miles, so it's nice to get used to it. I'm breathing a little bit harder when I'm doing some of the speed work, but I'm going to be breathing a little harder when I'm in altitude. And this week, the mental, mental training was to play with the gears a little bit, switch gears, and know that when you're pushing a high gear, for instance, I did speed work where I did 3 sessions of 10 minutes pushing it hard. I know it doesn't seem like that long. Then I would recover for 5 minutes in between those. But I would push to what I would do in a short 5K race, and so it's a lot faster than, or a lot harder than I would normally do if I was just out on my long runs. And so I talked to myself a little bit, because that 10 minutes, you'd be surprised how much longer 10 minutes is than 7 minutes or 8 minutes. It just seems like it goes a little bit. So it was pretty much running a mile, a little bit more, and I would kind of tell myself that I have the ability to slow down if I want to. So I'm out there by myself. I'm trying to give myself a hard effort, and I'm trying to learn to be comfortable with that hard effort, but I still have the ability to slow down if I need to. And just kind of thinking that I could slow down if I need to, giving myself permission to back down if I wanted to, made me want to continue that pace and go a little faster. So I guess in some respect I use reverse psychology on myself. I don't know what you call that, but it's, I think, just having an out that you can quit if you need to, or back down if you need to. It'll be okay, but go ahead, and it gives you a little bit more confidence to try something. And the quit probably is not what I would put in there, but you could back down. So if you're starting a program, at least I can walk this far. Maybe I can walk a little further. I can stop at my other pace if I need to, or bring the pace down. Just because I slowed the pace down doesn't mean I can't speed it up again after I take a little break. So those are all kind of good mind games that I'm playing with myself during running. And you can apply those to yourself as well, whether it's your exercise or even nutrition. I'm comfortable doing this. I think I'm going to try this. If I don't like it, I can always back down, but I'm going to give it a shot. And giving your permission to change the speed of your transition to plant-based, or change the speed of your strengthen or something, but just change is, I guess, what is a good thing. And then you have the ability to, but you can also push a little harder, or you can take a break and push a little harder again. You're not giving up and letting go. So if you have a bad day eating plant-based, it's not over. You don't have to go back to your standard American diet, your old ways, what was comfortable, and start telling yourself that story. You can stay with okay, this day didn't go good. We went out. There weren't a lot of choices that I understood, so this is what I did. But tomorrow I'm going to go back at it and I'm going to do it this way. So learn from where you were, or give yourself permission to have a slower day and then accelerate. And I'm going to do it even more this way. Give yourself an opportunity. And again, I think everybody needs to look at their plate and make sure that they're getting what we would call a well-balanced meal. And if you have to go back to the plates that we had in grade school and the cafeteria where they had the little sections, look to see whether you have a section of greens, you have a section of beans, you have a section for grains, you have a section for other vegetables, you have a section for fruit, that it's well balanced. Because I think we tend to, drift back into the comfort of, everybody likes pasta, everybody likes rice. Eat the things we like and kind of ignore the rest. So good luck with that, and keep pushing, changing gears, get into the comfort zone, and I'll speak with you next week. Thanks for listening.